how stable is history, really? I mean, how solid are our memories, especially for those huge events everyone knows? Today, we're doing a deep dive into something that really messes with that idea, the Mandela effect. Specifically, we're looking at one of the most analyzed moments ever, the assassination of JFK.
That's right. We got some fascinating material from a listener, and it points out some, well, pretty big differences between how lots of people remember that day and how it's actually presented now. Our job today is to sort of unpack these apparent changes, look at the specific examples given, and, think about what it all might mean for history and memory.
Yeah, and if you're the kind of person who likes getting up to speed quickly, loves those aha moments, and exploring different angles without getting totally bogged down, then this is definitely for you. The Mandela effect, for anyone new to it, is basically this weird thing where tons of people remember something one way, but reality or the records show something else entirely. Some even think reality itself might have shifted. Okay, let's unpack this. We're going to start with the car itself. Right, so November 22nd, 1963, Dallas. JFK's in the motorcade. What car was he in? That seems like a basic fact, but our listener's source brings it up as a major point.
Well, the official history, the version you find now, says it was a six-seater limousine, and there were six people inside. President and Mrs. Kennedy, Governor Connolly and his wife Nellie, and then two Secret Service agents, Roy Kellerman and the driver, William Greer.
6 people, 6 seats. Okay, but that's not how everyone remembers it, is it? This is where the Mandela effect kicks in hard for some.
Exactly. A lot of people have this really distinct memory of a four-seater car. Just four people inside. JFK, Jackie, Governor Connolly, and the driver. That's it.
Just 4. That's a pretty big difference. What evidence does the source offer for this 4-seater memory?
Well, two interesting things are mentioned. First, it talks about a world-class JFK museum. It doesn't specify which one that apparently had a model of the assassination car on display, and it's the four-seater version.
A museum, a JFK museum showing a 4-seater. That's odd, right? Why would they display something that contradicts the official record?
That's the question the source raises. And then there's mention of an Old Life magazine cover. Apparently, this cover also clearly shows the four-seater car.
An Old Life cover, wow.
Yeah, and it supposedly matches the museum model and that collective four-seater memory. The source even specifically notes Jackie Kennedy is shown holding flowers on this cover.
Jackie holding flowers on the cover of Life in a 4-seater? That's a specific image? So how do we square that? A museum model, a magazine cover, versus the official account? It really makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It certainly poses a challenge to the straightforward historical narrative. Are these artifacts misinterpreted, or is the collective memory pointing to something else?
Okay, let's move on from the car itself to the event, the assassination footage. And just a heads up for everyone listening, this next part gets into some descriptions from the source material that might be unsettling, focusing on alleged changes in the famous Zapruder film.
Right. So for people experiencing this specific Mandela effect related to the JFK assassination, when they watch the footage now, it looks different from how they remember it. First off, they perceive two extra people in the car, presumably Governor Connolly and his wife, who they just don't recall being there in previous viewings.
So suddenly the car looks more crowded to them.
Exactly. And then there's the impact on conspiracy theories. There was a well-known theory, based on analyzing the film, that the driver, William Greer, turned and shot JFK.
Oh yeah, I remember hearing about that one based on his head turn or something.
Precisely. But according to the source, for those experiencing the Mandela effect, that theory is now no longer possible at all when they watch the footage today. The angles, the movements, they just don't support it anymore in their current perception.
So a whole conspiracy theory just evaporates based on how the film now looks to them.
That's the claim. But the most, let's say, startling alleged change described in the material involves Jackie Kennedy.
Okay.
The perception reported is that she, quote, seems like the one that shot JFK, and that the shot seems to come from below his head.
Whoa, okay, that's a massive shift in perception. How does the source describe this?
It details a sequence where she goes up close to him, holds something under his head, and then the blood splatter. It's quite graphic in the description.
Pulled something under his head.
That's what the source says. And it adds another observation, that as she crawls onto the back of the car, she seems to push something behind the back seat. And the source explicitly asks if this could have been the gun.
Wow. That's a completely different and frankly disturbing interpretation of her actions. What makes this really stand out, though, is the personal testimony mentioned, right?
Yes. The author of the material claims they'd watched the Zapruder film maybe 24 times at least over the years.
Okay, so very familiar with it.
Very. But they say they never noticed any of these details. The extra people, the driver theory being impossible, and especially these actions by Jackie until this year.
Just this year, after watching it dozens of times.
That's the claim. And they add that this whole Jackie shot JFK idea was basically unheard of, a completely new conspiracy theory to them until very recently.
That's the really mind-bending part. If you've seen something that many times, how does it suddenly look so fundamentally different? Here's where it gets really interesting.
It does push the boundaries of explanation, doesn't it? Whether it's memory playing tricks, suggestibility, or something else.
And adding to this puzzle, there's another figure the source brings up, someone who was always there historically, but maybe feels new within this altered memory, Governor Connolly.
Right, Governor John Connolly, who was sitting in front of the Kennedys and was also seriously wounded. The source highlights a specific quote attributed to him, apparently from testimony or an interview afterwards.
What's the quote?
He's quoted as saying, constantly, there was going through my mind thoughts of Nellie, of the children of what she'd done. Nellie was his wife who was in the car with him.
Of what she'd done. Okay, how is that being interpreted by those experiencing this Mandela effect, according to the source?
Well, the source suggests the governor seems to be implying that a woman in the car done something very bad and he could not believe it.
Now, objectively, in a moment of extreme trauma and injury, someone might say something confusing or disjointed, but in the context of the other alleged changes.
Exactly. For someone already perceiving Jackie Kennedy's actions differently in the film, this quote from Connolly, focusing on what she'd done, presumably referring to his wife Nellie, but potentially ambiguous to someone looking for confirmation, seems to fit into that alternative narrative.
It kind of clicks together for them, even if it seems like a stretch from the outside.
Precisely. It becomes another piece of the puzzle, reinforcing this unsettling new picture of the event that they feel they are now seeing. It creates a compelling, though deeply disturbing, storyline for them. This raises an important question about narrative construction.
Okay, so let's recap what we've unpacked from the listener's material here. We started with the car, a strong collective memory of a four-seater, potentially backed by a museum model and an old Life magazine cover, versus the official six-seater history. Then we moved to the Zapruder film footage itself, with the alleged appearance of extra people, the way a famous driver shot JFK theory suddenly seems impossible, and most disturbingly, the completely altered perception of Jackie Kennedy's actions.
Right, that perception that she might have been involved, culminating in the idea she hid something as she climbed out.
And finally, that puzzling quote from Governor Connolly, what she'd done, which, for those experiencing this effect, seems to add another layer of confirmation to their altered view.
Yeah, it paints a picture of significant divergence from the standard historical account. And that leaves us with the big question, doesn't it? What's actually going on here?
Is it, as many psychologists would suggest, a fascinating case of collective false memory? You know, memories getting distorted over time, influenced by media, shared stories, maybe even suggestibility.
That's certainly the conventional explanation. Memory is known to be malleable, reconstructive. We confabulate, we fill in gaps, we adopt narratives. It's entirely possible these are deeply ingrained, but ultimately inaccurate recollections shared by a large group.
But the source material and the whole idea of the Mandela effect leans towards something stranger. This idea of a changed universe, as the source puts it.
Exactly. The alternative explanation is that reality itself, or at least our shared timeline or historical record, has somehow been altered, and these people are remembering a previous version. It sounds like science fiction, but it's the core of the Mandela effect phenomenon for those who believe they experience it directly.
So what does this all mean for you, listening right now? How do we process this kind of information about something as solid-seeming as the JFK assassination?
It forces us to confront how we understand facts and history. Even for something so heavily documented, filmed, investigated, there's this divergence in memory, these persistent alternative versions.
It makes you think, doesn't it? How firm is our grasp on historical truth? Could details documented by museums, by magazines seemingly shift? Or is our own memory just far more flexible, far more easily influenced than we like to admit?
Could history be harder to erase than we think, resisting changes? Or is memory the fluid thing, constantly rewriting itself?
Definitely something to mull over. Keep questioning, keep looking closely at the world around you, and maybe even at your own memories.